Well, hello everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, MakerDAO. Welcome to another Toolhouse Rock. This is episode 16, and today we're hosting OpenZeppelin. Uh, Before we get into OpenZeppelin, a quick 30 seconds on Toolhouse Rock. This is a structured tooling call that we started around the genesis of Endgame to give the community and the ecosystem an archive of Web3 tools and solutions that may either be useful today during the Endgame transition or in the future for the operations of sub-DAOs and the future Endgame state. Some quick disclaimers. The views of myself and the ecosystem are our own. There may be inaccuracies, though rare, are possible. This is definitely not financial advice and not legal advice, but it might be operational advice. Like I said at the top of the call, today we have Gustavo and Luca from OpenZeppelin. They reached out through the Maker Discord to ask to showcase their Defender 2.0 solution today. Some of the impact areas against the scopes that were identified setting up this call were stability, ecosystem support, and the protocol scope by introducing some improvements in security, scalability, and integrations. So with that, I'll go ahead and stop my screen share here, and I believe allow Gustavo to go ahead and share the little presentation that they built for Defender 2.0. And as always, please feel free to drop your questions in the chat. We could take a pause in the action while the guests are talking, or either address them at the end, whatever is more comfortable for the team here.
That's good. Perfect. Thank you. Let me start sharing my screen. And thank you everyone for the opportunity to present here. Pretty excited to be able to show you this. Let me see if I can make this a bit bigger. That should work. So today we're here to show you Defender 2.0. This is something that we're very excited to be launching. It has been in beta, first in a private beta via invite only, and now we launched a public beta. So after this, if anyone wants to test it out or just play with it, feel free to go to our homepage and sign up for a free account. You will be able to test it for free, and you will be able to use most, if not all, the features that I'm going to show you here today. A quick presentation before we jump into the interesting thing. Defender 2.0 is basically our comprehensive security tool to cover all stages of the lifecycle. It builds on all of our experience in the security and smart contract side, but also on have been running Defender 1.0 for a while, which was heavily focused on the security operation part. What we wanted to do with 2.0 is really give projects all the tools they need to cover the entire lifecycle. So yeah, like I say, it's a comprehensive tool for all your development needs. It has a few modules. So starting off with, skip one. So with secure code, we wanted to help projects build securely from day one. So the idea is that it integrates very nicely with our contracts library and with all the tools that we have built a GitHub application basically that will give you real-time alerts and reports on your security posture. With the secure audit module, what we've done is basically streamline the audit process. So you will see shortly how much more efficient your audits can get using this. Next up, we have secure deploy. The idea here is to help projects with very simple modifications to their deployment scripts right now for Hard Hat and with Foundry coming soon to make sure the deployments are more secure, minimizing the risk in this crucial moment, and also help adding some features like the ability to do deterministic deployments with ease. We also kept all the nice things about monitor and operate and added a few. So with monitor actions and incident response, you will be able to both monitor your smart contract system securely, but also being able to respond to any security threat, or also build automation if you need to. So yeah, without much further ado, I can jump into the demo, which I think is the most interesting piece. So this is the homepage of Defender 2.0. It allows you to navigate through the menu. So I'll start from left to right and maybe spend more time in some of the modules, which I think might be more interesting for this community. But please feel free to drop your questions in the the chat section, and I'll make sure to take a pause every 1 or 2 modules to answer all of them. So starting out with Code Inspector, this is a new addition in Defender 2.0. What it does, this is a GitHub application that you can install and decide to what repositories you want to give permission to. And what it does, it of course runs a static analyzer in your code base as you would expect, but it also runs some machine learning and AI algorithms that we have developed through the years and we've been using while conducting security reviews and audit for a while. And it also runs a dependency checker, which has come very useful in recent times with some of the recent vulnerability. This is a way we've also used to let our community and our projects know that there might be a security issue. So this has been proven to be a very useful tool for projects, both because it's very easy to set up, but also gives you great insights into your code base with very little effort. So how does this work? First of all, every time that you open a pull request that touches a relevant file, and with that, I mean a .sol file or a package.json file, it will run a complete analysis of your code base, and it will output a summary of the results right here as a PR. Sorry, as a comment in your pull request, basically letting you know what potential issues you have in your code base. And it will also output a link to a full report in the Defender platform, as we can see here. What can I see with this issue, with this report? Basically, all the issues that are listed as critical or high are directly related to my security. So if I have any potential reentrancy attacks or stuff like that, I will see that in red, but it doesn't stop there. So anything that is marked as low or node is probably not going to directly impact the security of your protocol, but it's still a good practice to follow because it will let you improve your code base as you go. So for example, I may be having some inconsistency on some parts of my code base, or I may be lacking some doc strings or updating a state variable without emitting an event, that kind of stuff. We also recently added the ability for you to trigger a report manually. This basically lets you pick from some of the repositories that you have configured and decide what branch and commit you want to run. So if you don't need to open a pull request at that moment, you can just basically trigger the report manually, deciding what commit you want to check. So maybe you're developing a feature before merging it to the master or submitting the PR, and you want to make sure that you're building securely from day one. So you can do that. And we're also working hard on adding in the coming weeks support for you to be able to customize this. So maybe you want to include or exclude certain folders. You don't want the analysis to run on your mock files, for example. We will give you that option, as well as to enable or disable individual rules that may not apply to your project. Yeah, and don't forget to drop your questions if you have any in the meantime. So next up, we have the audit module. On this one, I'll be very brief, since what this does is basically streamlines the process for an audit. So if you do an audit with us, right now we're starting with audits with OpenZeppelin, but we plan to open up more of this in the future. You will be able to see the full audit report and basically interact with the auditors right here inside the OpenZeppelin platform. Anyone that has gone through an audit knows how time-taking that process can be, but how critical that is. So we wanted to help mitigate some of the issues that we see today. So you will be able to see your full report here and be able to basically interact with the auditors by replying to the issues, leaving your PR links and commit links for them to be able to review those issues and get back to you. And you will be able to afterwards publish the report from the Defender platform as well and export this as a PDF, for example. Next up, we have the deploy module. So this is also something that we have invested a lot of time and effort to putting into Defender 2.0. Basically, what deployment allows you to do, it allows you to deploy security to multiple chains. One thing that we noticed is that a lot of the projects were still deploying from developer's laptop or stuff like that, and just the whole deployment step was lacking some of the critical security measurements and tools that we thought were needed in the ecosystem. So deployment allows you to configure basically two environments, your production environment and your test environment. You can define to what chains you want to deploy. We support the most common ones. And if the MakerDAO endgame plays out, we expect to support MakerDAOs as well, of course. And the idea is that you're able to deploy to whatever chains you want here securely. So that means you can use one of the three methods that we support. You can deploy using a relayer, that is a wallet managed securely inside Defender. You can deploy using EOA. So if you want to just propose your deployments from your script, you can do that, and then you come into the Defender UI, sign that transaction, and you are basically able to finalize the deployment by making your EOA the deployer. And you are also able to do that with a multisig. So you have full flexibility there, and I can show you how a configured environment looks like. Basically, it tells you on what chains you're deploying. It can be as little as one chain or as many as you want, as long as they are supported inside Defender. And basically, it also allows you to define, like I say, your deploy approval process and what we call the upgrade approval process. So you can define how you want to manage your upgrades, like a safe multi-sig signing a transaction, or more relevant in this case, you can define what governor contract is the one that is going to be approved in the upgrades. Basically, this funnels those request to the appropriate place. So if you select a governor contract, what this will do is every time that someone deploys and propose an upgrade, it will show here as pending, and it will let you send that proposal to the DAO for the review and be able to approve or reject that transaction basically.
Gustavo, before we hop forward, I think you mentioned something interesting about noticing that devs were still mainly deploying from their laptops. Could you talk through some of the like added security benefits about centralizing the deployment environment from that physical resiliency point of view? I'm assuming that you know, some of the obvious benefits of you know, having shared access to the same deploying environment are pretty evident, but from your like hands-on point of view, are there any like war stories just to illustrate the point of how OpenZeppelin can enhance, say, an operational workflow for deployments?
Yeah, absolutely. Starting off with the security side, it really depends on what permissions you're giving to the deployer, for example, or what role it plays in your deployment. But if it even has a basic permission over your account, you're running the risk that if you are hard coding those private keys in your laptop, basically, if they leak for some reason, you will be exposed to someone taking hold of that. What we do is that if you are deploying with EOA or multisig, you never even have to trust the deployment to go through without you actually signing the transaction here. So that is a great security benefit. But even if you want to really automate things and you're using a relayer, what we give you is API keys and secrets for the deployments. And the private keys are stored securely inside a hardware vault. So basically, if for some reason those API keys and secrets got compromised, you can always rotate them, allowing you to keep the same deployer address, even if they get compromised, because you can basically invalidate the keys and reuse new ones. And from the operational standpoint, just being able to track what deployments you have conducted, having a clear history, integrated that into your Defender workflow, and also taking advantage of some of the deterministic deployment options that we offer as part of Defender 2.0. I think those are also great added benefits.
Makes sense. And then would there be any trade-offs? It sounds like that we are potentially trusting OpenZeppelin with some potential new security vulnerabilities by enabling that sort of access. Is there anything to keep in mind when moving into a deployment environment to be aware of?
Yeah, great question. So it really depends on what deployment mechanism you're using. If you're picking the basically the EOA or multisig, I don't think you are assuming any new trust assumptions. Besides that, we process the bytecode correctly, but you're also kind of already assuming that with a hard hat or Foundry that you're using. So we're relying on those same tool sets to do the deployment. So I don't think you're adding any new assumptions there. If you're selecting the relayer, of course, you are relying on us keeping those private keys secure, which we do on a hardware vault that we don't have access. But yes, in that case, you're adding kind of an additional security assumption.
Got it. Sounds like some good flexibility and maturity that could be added in a couple different ways. Looking at the chat, Bonapublico asked the question, does it detect and prevent alterations in smart contract code during deployment?
That is a great question. Right now, we don't like the code inspector module and the deploy module are separate, so you can run your scanning while you're developing and before deploying, but it doesn't stop you if you have some vulnerabilities. You are free to deploy, but it's something that we are exploring and seeing how we can start integrating some of the separate modules, and that includes the code inspector and deploy. So if you are trying to deploy something that you have previously scanned and we detect that you have some potential issues, we might want to warn you. It's something that is not available yet, but we're exploring it. We will, of course, always give you the option that you can override that and deploy, because at the end, you are the owner of your security, and we don't want to stop you if you think that the security alert is not relevant for you or is a false positive. We really try to lower false positive rates, but we know they are always there, so you will always have that control. But for now, TLDR, they are separated. You can run the inspector and you can do deployments, but they are not tied to it.
Appreciate the question, Bonapublica. And Gustavo, just for your benefit as well as you continue with the demo, just to talk through the two different like perspectives or contexts for the demo here. Today's call is mainly joined by alignment conservators, which are responsible for overseeing and ultimately voting and accepting changes to the protocol. But we do also have a developer or two in the room looking around. So just for that added context. But yeah, thank you. It doesn't look like there's any questions currently, and we'll pause the action if any more pop in.
Perfect, that's great. And I think especially the upgrade approval process is relevant for anyone that needs to review and approve changes. And we will see shortly in the action section, we have the concept of transaction proposal, which is kind of an admin function. So you can propose something from Defender, and if you select a governor contract, for example, to be the target of that, it will be sent to the DAO, and individual like voters can review that on a separate UI, like, I don't know, Tally or something like that, or they can also review that proposal inside Defender. Moving on to the more security operations side, we have monitors. These used to be called sentinels in 1.0 because we have some Defender 1.0 users in the room and they're wondering where sentinels went. They were just rebranded to monitors because we thought that made more sense. And we have basically two flavors of monitors. One is Defender monitors. Basically, those are like the easy monitors that are native to Defender that you can create inside the platform. And the other one is an integration with Forta. So we also have Forta monitors in case someone is wondering. Forta is a fully decentralized monitoring network that you can build your bots and use it on your own, but we also give you an integration with Defender in case you want to leverage some of the alerting channels and some of the automation and security and incident response capabilities that we offer in Defender. Or you can also leverage some of the built bots built by the Forta team or by the community. There's a lot of interesting stuff there. So let's first explore the simpler one. Those are the Defender monitors, basically. Creating them is super easy. The first option that you have is through the UI, basically. So I'm going to show you how monitor looks like. This is a simple example for an ERC20 contract. Basically, you just give it a name, define what contract or contracts you want to monitor. We also have this concept of risk category. This is more for organizational purposes. It doesn't really affect on how we treat the alert. It's just for you to be able to filter. Maybe you have some financial monitors, some somewhere that are monitoring governance events, or that are more related to suspicious activities. So it's just for you to be able to filter based on that and organize your monitors. If you don't want to use that, you can just select no. Next up, you have to decide how you want to filter that alert. So if you just leave it like this, it will basically alert you on every call that this contract is involved. This is a stablecoin contract that I have previously deployed to Guerrilla, but you can select anything that you want. For example, what I'm doing in this case, I'm using the function filter. So anytime that someone calls the min function with an amount greater than 1 million, that for me, I'm treating as a suspicious mint arbitrarily, I'm sending an alert. So basically, this allows you to filter on any functions calls and allow you to specify any filters on the parameters of those functions, but you can also use events. For example, if I want to know when this contract gets paused, for example, that's something I can do. Or if I want to be alerted when there's a transfer, that's also something I can do using events. And if those simple monitor filters don't suit your needs, or you need to run some custom logic, you can use transaction filters. These transaction filters allow you on one side to basically filter on values of the transaction. So maybe you want to basically filter down by transactions that have a high gas price because those are suspicious. We know that hackers use high gas prices usually when they are conducting an exploit, or you want to track the value of the transaction. So you have that available. And the most interesting thing is you have custom filters. This is basically a JavaScript piece of code that you can run anytime before the monitor triggers. So after running all the other filters, if you put some code here, what this will do, it will basically run that function that you're defining here to see if it should trigger or not. Here you can run some custom logic or calculation. You can query an external API, or you can query an external smart contract. Maybe you want to check the liquidity of a DEX. Maybe you want to query the balance if you're monitoring a breach, that kind of stuff. So that's the way you would do it with Defender monitors, by using custom filters. And on the alerting side, the way that this is organized is you have 3 severity categories. You have low, medium, or high, basically. Usually you would send anything that is security related to the high severity, while maybe more of the governance monitor and the market operations monitor that you may create, for example. That is some of the work that we have done for Compound, like segregating this. So anything that is high severity goes on one channel, and anything that is low severity market operations stuff goes on a different channel, which is more noisy. So you have those options, and all of these severities you can associate them with notification channel. We support what you would expect. So we support Discord, Telegram, Slack, email, PagerDuty, OpsGenie if you have like an on-call team that wants to receive those alerts first. I think I'm forgetting some, but we also have a custom webhook integration. If there's like any system that the community has already built, or someone wants to integrate that, you can also connect that using a custom webhook base. And while of course it's great to get alerted on potential security vulnerabilities, more critical is probably being able to respond to them on time. So we offer you 2 options to be able to respond to a security event. One is executing an action. So for example, I can go ahead and do an emergency pause, for example, if I detect something odd. This list, by the way, is actions that I've already created. I will show you the actions tab afterwards. And you can also execute an incident response scenario. An action is basically an atomic piece of code that you can run, similar to the monitoring filters, while an incident response scenario is a more orchestrated way to respond to an incident that may involve multiple actions. We will see all of that shortly. Don't worry if some of this is still confusing. We will see those 2 modules in the next sections. And before we wrap up the monitoring section, I want to show briefly the integration with Forta. So like I said, Forta is a decentralized monitoring network, and there's a lot of great bots built by the community. So for example, this is an attack detector feed that is a bot built by the Forta community that basically collects alerts from multiple sources. So it checks if there's like tornado cash funding, if the uses machine learning to detect if the bytecode of that smart contract is getting deployed is potentially malicious, and is sending an alert if those thresholds are above a certain parameter that is set in the bot. And you can basically define how you want to filter that. So you can define what contracts you want to filter that. In this case, I just selected the ENS governor because that's what I had selected here. But any contract that you add to your address book is something that you can do. For example, here I have the maker token, so I can select that. And if I receive an alert that involves the token, I will be able to receive an alert and react to that accordingly. You also have the same alert capability. So all the things that we saw on Defender monitors, you have them here. The idea is that you can integrate Forta alerts into your regular workflow. So you can send them to whatever notification categories you want to define, and you can execute actions or incident response scenarios in response to those alerts. And the last thing about monitors is that we are now providing a suite of monitoring templates. Basically, this is a curated list of common monitoring use cases that we've seen across the industry. For example, here you can see the attack detector. This is something that we've seen a lot of projects getting interested in because it basically allows me to receive an alert before the attack actually happens, which of course is what we want to do and have the ability to respond. But we also have like more common monitors like multi-sig monitors, upgrade monitors, governance alerts, etc. And we keep adding and maintaining this list. Before we jump into actions and incident response, are there any questions about monitors? Because it's one of the most feature-packed modules, I think, that we have. Okay,
Yeah, I don't.
if not,
I was just gonna say I don't see any questions popping in. I think the multi-safe monitor was definitely something that I'll have to revisit a little bit later. Is that mainly just tracking transactions and activity? We typically use like Etherscan today to set up alerts. Could you compare and contrast like the differences between what Etherscan offers and how OpenZeppelin would approach the monitor tool?
yeah, good question. In a simple scenario, I think they maybe is fairly equivalent. The nice thing here is that you want to have all your monitors inside a monitoring suite, basically. So you probably won't stop at a multi-sig monitor. You will monitor for like governance changes, parameter changes, potential attack to smart contracts. So having all the monitors in a single place, I think is really useful. And you can also integrate them with your workflow. So you can send alerts to wherever you need to. So those could be multiple channels. To be honest, I'm not quite sure what Etherscan supports on that front. And you can also conduct automation. So if for some reason you detect you want to filter some of the transactions and you detect that activity is suspicious, you can potentially initiate a workflow to do something or do something with the signers of the multi-sig. That's really depends on like the security threats that you detect and how you want to react to them. But you have all both the alerting and the automations capabilities that you have in Defender tied with in this case, a simple monitor, which is the multi-sig monitor.
Makes sense. Yeah, we have definitely bootstrapped something together, but having the ability to filter and sort different alerts would definitely make that a lot more useful within the team. The one question as a follow-up then for that would be alerting outside of OpenZeppelin. Is it mainly just like email pings or alerts, notifications within the platform, or is there other integration points that could be tied in?
Yeah, great question. So these are the notification channels that we support. So you will see the common things that you will expect. So we have native integrations with Discord, Slack, Telegram, Datadog, Ops Genie, PagerDuty, email. So all of them are supported for any kind of alert that you want to send via Defender. And you also have the option to do a webhook. So maybe there's some tools that have already been built by the community that you want to leverage. So they may not have the same API as these others. So you can just use a custom webhook, receive those alerts in this custom system and react accordingly.
Perfect. Appreciate that.
Okay, let's move on. If someone thinks of another monitoring question, feel free to drop it and we can revisit. So next up, we have actions. Basically, actions are JavaScript or TypeScript pieces of code that you can run on different triggers. I'm going to show a very simple one, which is one that mints new tokens on that stablecoin contract that we've been basically using for the demo. And you can run the action on 3 different triggers. So if you have any automation that you need to perform on a schedule, like sending a transaction, I don't know, updating an on-chain oracle, that kind of stuff, you can use a schedule for that. So that's what you will use for automation, for operation automation. You can also create an action that is triggered via webhook. So if you want to integrate it with a front end or with a backend system, etc., you can use that. And the most interesting one is monitors. That's the one that we saw that we wanted to use when we were visiting the monitoring section. So if you select monitors, this action will be triggered whatever monitor that you define, and the payload of that monitor will be sent to the action. So you will be able to access information about the alert, basically. So what the sender of the transaction was, what the destination of the transaction was, why it was triggered, what events triggered it, etc. So if you need to do some additional filtering here, or you need to grab those details to be able to react accordingly, you can do that. And how you define them, you have a few options. The first one to get started is you can just drop your JavaScript code here in the UI. But we also have a Defender API, Defender SDK, and Defender as code, which are all options available for you to manage not only actions, but all Defender resources. So the Defender SDK, for example, if you do want to deploy programmatically resources to Defender, it's a great option. And if you prefer the infrastructure as code approach, we have Defender as code, which is based on the common serverless plugin. So you would define all your Defender resources in a YAML template, and we have actually a good functionality to support anything that you create in the UI if you want a head start. So you have a lot of flexibility on how you want to manage your infrastructure. We usually see projects starting in the UI, and as they mature and create more resources and add more people to the team managing those resources, they move to a more code-based approach. So that can be the SDK or Defender as code. That really depends on the preference of the team, basically. Yeah, so with actions, what you can do is basically anything, because they are just pieces of code. But one example is an emergency pause, or removing liquidity from one place if you detect a security threat, or blacklisting a certain address if you want to do that. So it really depends on what your security posture and policy is, and how much intervention you want to have against the protocol. And in terms of transaction proposals, these are form-based actions, and this is very related to how you want to admin things. So this allows you to basically create transactions against whatever contract you define. So what I can do, for example, is say, okay, I want to pause this contract, select the target contract. I will keep using this stablecoin contract I've been using for the demo purposes. This will go ahead and pull the ABI of that contract and allows you to select what function you want to call. And this integrates into the approval process. So I think this is where things get interesting. So of course, in this case of allow, you won't be running transactions with an EOA approving it or with a multi-sig approving it. So you can basically select whatever approval process you want. So in this case, governor contract. I don't think I have one added for Goerli. I can see if I have one for mainnet. I think I do. Let me see if I find something. Okay, doesn't matter. Basically, on the approval process allows you to select how you want to conduct that transaction. If you select a governor contract, this will send the transaction to whatever governor contract you have. And I think on mainnet, I added an approval process that was to make to governor. Let me see. Okay, yeah, I think I had an example with ENS, but regardless, if you have a governor contract, you can basically define what the network, the target contract, and it also detects that, for example, this one has a time lock. So it will send that transaction to the governor for it to be submitted to the DAO, basically. And if there's like an emergency action that needs to be taken that involves an integration with the multisig, you can also select the multisig as an approval process, meaning that you can also run those emergency passes or interventions through Defender as well. Just to clarify this, of course, at the end of the day, the rules that apply are whatever is on chain. Defender only allows you to make this process more visible and easier to understand. So whatever transaction proposals you create will be shown here in the pending state, and you will also be able to see a history of your proposal. Here, for example, here I have a proposal to unpause the smart contract that was created a while ago. So I can come ahead, inspect that, and be able to decide if I want to approve this or not. So this is a good tool for decision makers to be able to fully visualize what the proposal to the DAO is doing. In this case, it is unpassing this stablecoin contract. So it even simulates the transaction. So I will be able to see if this if this will fail, if it goes through. So that is very useful. I know we've all seen scenarios where a proposal in a DAO passes, but then it ends up failing. So it's great to be able to visualize what the outcome of that transaction proposal would be. Cool. Next up, we have a combination of monitor and actions in a new incident response module that we have also delivered in Defender 2.0. So what incident response does is basically, like I said, it combines monitor with action. So the way you trigger an incident response scenario is via a monitor. So if you detect a security threat, you are able to select what incident response scenario you want to run, and while actions allow you to specify individual pieces of code on how you want to react to a certain thing. An incident response scenario allows you to provide a more orchestrated way to react to that incident, basically. And this can be fully automated. So whatever you are willing to automate via Relayer, for example, can be done quickly inside Defender, but it also integrates with more manual approval. So maybe for pausing the protocol or passing a certain smart contract, you need the approval of the multisig. So you can define, again, what approval process you want to use, and it will go ahead, execute everything until that point, and it will stop there and send that transaction to the safe API in this case. The signers can go ahead, review that transaction, sign it, submit it on chain, and then the rest of the scenario will execute. Basically, what incident response scenario allow you to do is put your incident response plan in an actionable manner that you can be ready for when something bad happens, and you don't have to figure out how you will execute things in the worst possible moment. Great. At this point, we're coming close to the features I wanted to show. We only have access control and some smaller stuff in Manage. So if someone has questions, don't forget to post them in the chat channel. I think we have plenty of time to answer them. Great. Next up, we have access control. This is also new in action. How does it identify and assess vulnerabilities, internal layer dependencies, OC external layer? Okay, great question. Monopolica, we don't run any vulnerability detection on actions. Actions are just pieces of code. We basically manage the infrastructure and the dependencies for you, so you are allowed to execute anything that you want. We don't run any security analysis on what you're running. The thing where you will detect if something is suspicious is by using Code Inspector, basically, to run an analysis against that code base. And I know there are some Forta bots as well that have the ability to, they use kind of a reputation system, if I'm not mistaken, to see if like an address has been detected as an attacker, a scammer, etc. So you can also leverage that. And on the dependency side, including our library, Contract Inspector would be the best place to scan for those vulnerabilities. This is wonderful. I know it's OpenZeppelin to launch, but I personally never interacted with, learning a ton. Yeah, I'm glad it is helpful. And don't forget that you can access this yourself after this. You can sign up for a new account, and we are even giving higher quotas or more functionality in this demo period. So make sure to take advantage of it. We also have, I forgot to mention that we have a feedback form here. So whatever you see that you have issues, you like, you don't like, feel free, and please drop your feedback here. It's going to be super helpful for us as we approach EA. And on the access control section, this is also kind of a, let's say, an admin feature that allows you to visualize and interact with your smart contract system in a way that it shows you all the roles available. So I imagine the DAO has multiple smart contracts deployed, and it's kind of hard to know what roles are assigned on each of these contracts. So being able to visualize all the permissions that you have, I think it's super helpful, because as we know, even with Etherscan and stuff like that, it's kind of hard to know what roles each account is assigned. You can, of course, query the contract directly and see if someone is part of a role or not, but being able to quickly visualize who's assigned to what is kind of a pain right now. So we wanted to help solve that. So if you have contracts that inherit from ownable and access control, those are the two patterns that we support today. And we give you a quick visualization that shows you what accounts are added to what role. So in some cases, you can see that we show a name, and on others, we just show an address. You may be wondering why is that? And the reason is that we have an address book. So you can add a contract to your address book. They don't even have to be your contracts. So when you go to the address book, so anything that you add here is like putting a label to an address. So in any place that we see that address on Defender, we will show you the name and not only the address, making it easier for you to reason about. And those accounts that you don't see a name for it, it means that I haven't added those to my address book. But if I added these two, they will be shown as if they with their name. So that's just a quick tip on how you can leverage Defender to be able to visualize and reason about your system even easier. So basically, you're able to visualize your permission, and you're able to add or remove accounts from the role. So let's say I want to add this guy, remove this guy from the minter role. I can, again, this concept of approval process play in. So I can select anything that is supported here. So again, that can be a multisig, or that can be the governor contract from the DAO. So if this is something change that the DAO needs to approve, that's what I will select here, save the changes, and it will submit to the governor contract for the votes to see if it passes or not. And the last couple of things that I wanted to show. So here in the manage section, we have all the kind of configuration things that you would expect. So here's where you can create relayers, add or remove API keys, secrets, that kind of stuff, configure your notification channels, add or remove team members. But a couple of neat features that we have added. One is Defender as code. So as I was saying, you have the option to manage your resources through the UI, but you also have the SDK and Defender as code available. So once you're ready to take more of a code-based approach, you can use Defender as code, which is basically a serverless .yaml that you can define for your resources. So you can export that from here, and that gives you a quick start, so you don't have to recreate everything from scratch if you want to move from the UI to the code-based approach. So just a tip there. And we are also launching fork networks. This is in beta now. Basically, this allows you to bring your own fork network that you have created via fork provider, like let's say Falcon. You input the RPC here, and you are able to use all the modules against that fork network. So maybe you want to test your deployments, or you want to test your actions or your monitors against a fork of mainnet, for example, to make sure that whatever you think will happen in those edge cases really happen, because we know how hard it's to tweak even testnets. So being able to have a fork that you can tweak however you want, it's great. So we now have that integration with Defender, so you will be able to do that as well. So yeah, that's it for me. Thanks a lot for bearing with me for almost 50 minutes now that I've been speaking. I hope this was helpful to at least some of you. And yes, please feel free to sign up for an account, play with it, and don't forget to send us our feedback. And if there's any final questions, we still have a few minutes to answer them.
Yeah, really appreciate the comprehensive demo. I was unaware of some of the operational tools and monitoring tools that OpenZeppelin possess, so that was definitely educational for me. I'm sure somebody from our team may be reaching out shortly. Before we wrap up fully, it doesn't look like we have any other remaining questions. What's the best way to get a hold of you guys if if somebody in the ecosystem needs to have a conversation beyond just having a demo or maybe some troubleshooting?
Yeah, I don't know what you think, Luca, but I think they can reach out via Discord. I think that could be a good place. I know that Luca is more active than me, but I'm still going to send my handle. But probably if you ping Luca, he might be more responsive than me.
Yeah, definitely. Feel free to reach out on Discord or Telegram. That's also my handle. And for those that still prefer email, I'll drop that in as well. It's luca@openzeppelin.com. And yeah, thanks for everyone for coming here. And thanks for the invite.
Thanks everyone.
Awesome.
Thanks a
Yeah,
lot.
appreciate it, guys. With that, we'll conclude Toolhouse Rock number 16. Thank you again for Gustavo and Luca for joining us to present OpenZeppelin, and catch you all next time. Take care.
Thanks everyone. Bye bye.